So anyway, Michael Barone, the end of America's 30-year engagement with China, question mark. This is a really good question to ask based on everything that kind of happened today. And obviously you want to talk about it, you want to bring this up, and you want to weigh in on this. Certainly this is the day to do that. Now we will also have open lines in the 5 o'clock hour. So if you don't do it now, you can do it later. That'll be fine. But this is pretty interesting, the things that have developed here recently. Will the demonstrations in Hong Kong come to be seen as the end of a 30-year period beginning with the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989 of the American-Chinese economic engagement and entanglement christened Chimerica by historian Niall Ferguson? Quite possibly, and without regard to what happens in Hong Kong, President Donald Trump's on and off tariff threats to China have shown his willingness to upend U.S.-China economic ties. Unlike his predecessors, he regards imports from China as harmful. They may provide cheap clothes and toys to American consumers, but they also seem to have destroyed more American manufacturing jobs than expected. In any case, Chinese economic growth has been flagging, and its workforce has essentially stopped growing. Post-Tiananmen annual growth, unparalleled in history, ranged from 8 to 14% from 1991 to 2013, but has tailed off probably below the official 6% level. Now, China is known for manipulating those levels and elevating them to make themselves seem more economically stable than they really are. And thanks to China's longtime one-child policy, its working age population has been declining, down 3% since 2011. For years, one big question about China was whether it would get old before it got rich. The answer seems to be that it has gotten old about halfway up the path. Poverty is way down, but incomes significantly lag those in North America, Western Europe, and East Asia, including Taiwan and Hong Kong. Meanwhile, just as the United States once lost low-skill manufacturing jobs, so China is now. Now, before I continue, because this is a really good piece, before I continue, I've told you all of this before at various points. Because I have done business in China, I probably know more about this than the average citizen walking around. I'm by no means an expert, okay? I'm just passing on the stuff that I know from my involvement economically with the Chinese labor market. Part of that also comes in from my knowledge with doing the show and the research that's involved in it and the various economic papers that have been written about this over the past 12, 15 years. But at the same time, what he is saying is accurate. China is, there's a reason I keep telling you this. You remember when we went back, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, everybody was super worried that China was going to call in their, was it $500 billion that they owned in American assets? They're going to call it in and they're going to bankrupt the entire country. We were going to be totally destroyed and decimated economically. China could beat us in a conflict just by doing that. There's nothing that we could do. And I used to sit on my little show and I would laugh hysterically at the fearmongers who were freaking out about that. And then what ended up happening, we ended up passing various spending bills and things like that that dwarfed that dollar amount. And as you can see, plainly, it didn't make any sense. Of course, what was being left out of those news articles is that China actually owed us more money. So if China was going to go ahead and call in all of their debts on the United States, we just call in the debts that they owed us, and it would actually be pretty much a wash. They did the same thing with Japan back in the 1990s under the Clinton administration. Japan was buying up all American commercial real estate. Before long, you weren't going to be able to have an American company anywhere in the United States unless, of course, you were beholden to the Japanese empire because they were buying up everything and you couldn't get away from it. And I laughed and mocked people who were fear-mongering about that as well. But ultimately, I was proven right. Now, again, not because I'm a genius on this stuff, but because instead of just reading one article with a fear-mongering headline, I would read several from experts in the fields. And on China, I've been trying to tell people one of the reasons that this trade situation, the tariff situation, if you will, you can call it a trade war now, it's official, with Trump, one of the reasons that this is going to be to the benefit of the United States in the long run, and probably even in the short run, although some industries will hurt short run, is they have caused so much damage over the past several decades, that getting rid of that damage is actually going to free up mobility, resources, manpower, that sort of thing, to actually do things the way that they're supposed to be done. You could easily argue, if you take a look at this with any elementary knowledge of economics, you can easily argue that our economic entanglement with China has actually hurt the American economy. It's slowed it down, if you will. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, we're just sending jobs overseas and we want those jobs to come back. I'm just talking about the gaming of currency that has happened. I'm talking about them directly targeting for destruction industries in the United States, like steel, as well as other industries. And they did it in a way that was cheating, because they retroactively got added to an international trade agreement that we had with multiple other countries. And because China was retroactively added to this thing, they didn't have to abide by any of the restrictions that all of the other signatories abided by. Now, it's a stupid deal. The United States is partly responsible for allowing that to happen, but it was a stupid deal. And it has plagued us ever since. That doesn't mean that there aren't great companies in China. It doesn't mean that products that come out of China aren't good. There are certainly a lot of great products that come out of China. There's a lot of good factories and things like that. They're owned by American companies. They simply use Chinese labor, and they produce really good things, okay? I'm not denigrating the quality of things that come out of China. Now, China's known for cheap, inexpensive, low-quality stuff, but they also have a fair amount of really good quality things that come out of that country, okay? That's important that people understand that. But there is no doubt that there has been great economic harm that has been done to the American economy because of our relationship with China. Something else that has to be factored into this: the United States automatically had the upper hand in this thing. Now, what we saw is we saw a bunch of people, and a lot on the political right, by the way, who are sitting out there saying, you know, we libertarians on the political right, I should say, but even though you consider libertarians on the political right, I didn't want there to be confusion with conservatives and libertarians, because they are two separate bodies. They are opposed to this because they want cheap things. And their perspective is cheap things mean that people buy those things. And if people buy those things, that means that people have to sell those things. And if people sell those things, then you have jobs. Now, those jobs might not be great jobs. They might be, you know, really low skill entry level jobs and things like that, but they're jobs nonetheless. And we obviously need low skill entry level jobs in the United States, especially with this whole fight for 15 nonsense. But that can be duplicated elsewhere. Okay? Doesn't have to be with China. That's the thing I keep trying to explain to people. Vietnam is trying to take every single American factory away from China and put it in their country. They are killing themselves trying to get American industry over there. Now, I'm going to tell you some things you're not going to hear on the news about this situation with China that broke down today. And for the record, the president going out there on Twitter and ordering American companies not to do business in China is silly. I don't know exactly what he's planning on doing. We are supposed to hear about an announcement today on what he's going to do with China. China just slapped a 25% tariff on soybeans and some other stuff. And this is in response to the president's comments about I'm the chosen one with the China thing the other day, which, again, we covered yesterday, which was 100% accurate. Everything he was saying was true. China has been cheating. China has been scamming the American people. China has been stealing from American companies. And the list of American companies that have had business dealings in China only to have Chinese companies steal their products, and even if it was patented, and then duplicate it and purchase it or reproduce it, and sell it back into the United States at a cheaper price, stealing somebody's product, and they can't be held liable in courts. The sheer amount of companies that have had that happen to them would blow your mind. Now, here's the thing that happens. A company has to make a decision. Do they run the risk of doing business in China knowing full well that the Chinese are likely going to steal their product from them and then become direct competitors in the same market, making the same product that you made, only doing it for cheaper? In the same facility, by the way. I've told you the story before, John Deere tractors. John Deere tractors, the factory in China, it was green during the day. It would shut down for 2 hours at night. It would reopen, and those tractors were blue. It was the same exact factory. It was the same exact workers, same equipment, same exact design. The color of the tractor was different. And that was happening to hundreds, maybe thousands of American companies. And that causes great economic harm. If you hop on to wish.com or GearBest or something like that, and for the record, there's nothing wrong with going on those websites to get little things here and there. But you will see a lot of things that are patented and are American designs or European designs that are not supposed to be duplicated or reproduced in China. Well, they're selling them on those websites for a fraction of the cost. And all you have to do is wait a few extra weeks to get delivery of them because they come from China. Now, that is a very real thing. That causes economic harm. Businesses have a great product. The consumer market wants it. They go to the market. It hits off. People love it. It starts taking off. They're making tons of money. They're starting to hire people. And then the Chinese factory that they hired to make that product because they originally couldn't make it in the U.S. now has the product, starts producing it itself, and then competes in the American marketplace with that company's patented product. And then that company, the ability to fight that is severely diminished. And what ends up happening is people buy the cheap Chinese knockoff. And sometimes it's as good as the other one. Sometimes it's lower quality. It just kind of depends. But Americans look for the deal. And that happens all the time. The president has been trying to sound the alarms on this for a long period of time. Some labor unions have tried to sound the alarms on this for a long period of time. And then at the same time, China was limiting American products in China. So China wanted to be able to have free access to the United States to do whatever they want, but they didn't want Americans to have free access to them. So this had to happen. The good news is China, their economy is not exactly great. And some of the stuff that I just read in the first part of this article here in Real Clear Politics is accurate. China's labor force is not nearly as good as the United States. It's not nearly as good as most of Southeast Asia, by the way. And they're older. They don't have anybody to replace them. They don't really know what to do. They're really good at stealing and copying designs and then pushing buttons and manufacturing things. They're not very good at thinking critically. So China's in a real big problem here. They also tied themselves to the United States way too much economically. We didn't do that to China. They did it to themselves. Some people think the United States has done that, but actually it really wouldn't take that much for the United States to get rid of China, whereas it would be damaging to China. But there's a danger there. We'll talk about that next. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.